My name is Robert Sullivan, and I'm 42 years old. For the past 9 years, I've worked as senior account strategist at Sephora Systems, a mid-sized tech company in Chicago. I've always prided myself on two things: my relentless work ethic and my ability to understand clients better than they understand themselves. In this business, those aren't just nice traits to have. They're what keep you alive. If you enjoy stories of calculated revenge and shocking plot twists, stick around because this one will blow your mind. Back in September 2022, I started working on what would become the biggest deal of my career. Titan Aero, a massive aerospace manufacturer with operations across 8 states, was looking for a complete software overhaul. The contract was worth $3 million, more than our company usually saw in an entire year. I threw everything I had into this project. I studied Titan's problems until I knew their business better than some of their own executives did. I spent weeks diving deep into Titan Aero's corporate structure, their pain points, and exactly what they needed to succeed. I flew to their headquarters in Detroit 4 times, paying for my own flights before the company even approved the travel budget. I built real relationships with their chief technology officer, their operations manager, and eventually their CEO, William Nash. These weren't just professional connections where we exchanged business cards and fake smiles. I genuinely understood their challenges and created solutions that would actually help them grow. The negotiations stretched from October 2022 all the way through March 2023. There were countless late-night phone calls, weekend presentations that I prepared in my home office, contract revisions that kept me up until 3 a.m., and technical demonstrations that I personally coordinated with our development team. Every breakthrough moment, every solved problem, every step forward in those negotiations could be traced directly back to my efforts. Everyone at Sephora knew this was Robert Sullivan's deal, and they respected the work I was putting in. But I need to tell you about something that happened in the middle of all this hard work. In January 2023, our CEO, Richard Callahan, made an announcement that raised eyebrows throughout the entire office. He was promoting his 28-year-old daughter, Hillary, to Director of Commercial Strategy. Now, Hillary has an MBA from a decent business school, I'll give her that. But her actual experience in our industry was limited to barely 2 years in junior marketing roles where she mostly posted on social media and organized company events. The promotion made people uncomfortable, but nobody said anything directly. You know how office politics work. Nobody wants to be the person who questions the boss's family decisions. Hillary immediately started scheduling meetings about what she called vision alignment and synergy optimization. She used all those corporate buzzwords that sound impressive in PowerPoint presentations but mean absolutely nothing in the real world. Meanwhile, I kept my head down and continued grinding away on the Titan Aero deal, focusing on actual results instead of fancy-sounding meetings that went nowhere. By late March 2023, everything was finally falling into place with Titan Aero. Their legal team had approved our final contract terms after weeks of back-and-forth negotiations. Their technical team had signed off on all our software specifications, including the custom features I'd worked with our developers to create specifically for their needs. Most importantly, William Nash himself pulled me aside and said something I'll never forget. "Robert, you've made this entire process smoother than any vendor negotiation we've had in the past 5 years. You understand our business, you listen to our concerns, and you deliver real solutions. We're genuinely excited about this partnership and what it means for our company's future." Those words meant everything to me because they confirmed that all my hard work had been worth it. On April 12, 2023, Titan Aero Industries officially signed the $3 million contract. It was the biggest single deal in Sephora's entire history. I remember sitting in my office that afternoon, looking at the signed documents, and feeling genuinely proud of what I'd accomplished. 7 months of dedicated work had finally paid off in the biggest way possible. But that feeling of satisfaction and pride lasted exactly 3 days. On April 15th, Hillary Callahan called an all-hands company meeting in our main conference room. The entire sales team was there, along with the executive staff, and even people from accounting and IT. Everyone in the building had to attend. She stood at the head of the table, practically glowing with confidence, and made an announcement that still makes my blood boil whenever I think about it. "I'm pleased to announce that Sephora Systems has successfully closed a $3 million contract with Titan Aero Industries," she said, her voice carrying that fake authority that comes with unearned positions. This incredible achievement represents the effectiveness of our new strategic leadership model and our innovative approach to client relations. It demonstrates what we can accomplish when we implement modern management techniques and focus on synergy-driven solutions. She went on like this for 10 minutes, using every corporate buzzword in existence. But here's the thing that destroyed me. She never mentioned my name. Not once. 7 months of my life, my expertise, my relationships, my late nights and weekend work, all of it became our new strategic leadership model. I sat there in that conference room, watching Hillary bask in applause for work she had absolutely nothing to do with, and I felt something I'd never experienced before in my professional life. It wasn't just anger, though I was furious. It wasn't just disappointment, though I was crushed. It was a cold, calculated realization that I was dealing with someone who had no ethical boundaries whatsoever. Someone who would steal credit for major achievements to make herself look successful and justify her unearned position. After the meeting ended, several of my colleagues approached me privately. Kevin from accounting whispered, "Everyone knows that was your deal, Robert. This is completely unfair." Monica from IT shook her head and said, "I can't believe she just took credit for your work like that. But corporate sympathy doesn't restore your professional reputation or pay your bills." I went back to my office, closed the door, and started thinking clearly about what had just happened and what it meant for my future at Sephora. Hillary had just shown me that she was willing to steal credit for major achievements. If she could do this once, she would definitely do it again. That's when I made a decision that would prove to be the smartest move of my entire career. Instead of marching into Richard Callahan's office to complain about his daughter, instead of sending angry emails or confronting Hillary directly, I decided to prepare for war. But this would be a quiet, strategic war fought with documentation and legal precision. I've been in corporate America long enough to know that emotional reactions rarely lead to good outcomes. The people who survive and thrive in these environments are the ones who think strategically, anticipate problems, and protect themselves with evidence that nobody can dispute. I started by securing every single piece of documentation related to the Titan Aero deal. Email threads, meeting notes, presentation drafts, contract revisions, flight receipts, hotel bills, everything. I copied all of it to an encrypted external drive and stored physical printouts in a safety deposit box at First National Bank downtown. Every document was time-stamped and dated. Every communication was preserved with full metadata intact. I was building an unshakable foundation of proof that would be impossible for anyone to argue against. But I didn't stop there with just collecting documents. I reached out to William Nash at Titan Aero and scheduled what I called a post-contract relationship meeting. During our lunch at Morton's Steakhouse in downtown Chicago on April 18th, I casually brought up the recent leadership changes at Sephora Systems. "How do you feel about working with our new commercial director going forward?" I asked, keeping my tone professional and curious. William's response was exactly what I hoped to hear, and I'll never forget his exact words. "To be completely honest, Robert, we've been impressed with your personal attention to this project from day one. You understood our needs immediately, you solved our problems, and you made this whole process smooth and professional. We're hoping to continue working directly with you on the implementation phase and any future expansion projects we might consider." I smiled and replied, "That's exactly what I was hoping to hear." Then I made a mental note of every single word he'd said. I documented that entire conversation immediately after lunch, including the date, time, location, and William's exact quotes. I was building my case piece by piece, creating evidence that would be impossible to dispute. Meanwhile, Hillary was making her own moves behind the scenes. On April 25th, exactly 10 days after her grand announcement about the Titan deal, she scheduled a private meeting with me. I walked into her newly renovated office, which she'd already decorated with expensive furniture and abstract artwork that probably cost more than most people's cars. She didn't even offer me a seat before getting straight to the point. "Robert, I've been reviewing our organizational structure, and I think we have some serious redundancy in our strategic accounts division," she said, not making eye contact with me. "With the new systems and processes I'm implementing, we can streamline our operations significantly and eliminate some overlapping responsibilities that are creating inefficiencies." The corporate doublespeak was thick, but the message was crystal clear. She was planning to fire me. I kept my expression completely neutral and asked, "What exactly are you suggesting?" She shifted in her expensive chair and replied, "I think it's time for Sephora to move in a new direction. Your position as senior account strategist is being restructured. We'll be transitioning to a more centralized approach under my direct oversight." Translation: she was eliminating my position so she could take full control. I nodded calmly and asked, "What's the timeline for these changes?" Hillary looked relieved that I wasn't arguing or getting upset. "We'll be making the transition at the end of next week. HR will handle all the details and paperwork." I stood up, shook her hand, and said, "I appreciate you giving me advance notice." As I walked back to my office, I wasn't panicked or devastated like she probably expected me to be. I was actually somewhat relieved because Hillary had just confirmed exactly what I suspected she would do, and I was already 10 steps ahead of her. That afternoon, I called my attorney, Frank Brennan, a labor law specialist I'd worked with years earlier on a contract dispute. I scheduled a meeting for the following day and began preparing the most comprehensive documentation package of my entire career. But the most important call I made was to Victor Hale, the CEO of Ascendric Solutions, a direct competitor to Sephora. Victor and I had met at industry conferences over the years, and he'd mentioned several times that he'd be interested in discussing opportunities if I ever considered making a change. "Victor, this is Robert Sullivan from Sephora," I said when he answered. "I think it's time we had that conversation you mentioned." On May 2nd, Hillary called me into HR for what she termed my transition meeting. Present were herself, HR Director Carol Walsh, and surprisingly, Richard Callahan himself. I walked in carrying a simple leather portfolio, looking as composed as if I were attending a routine performance review. "Robert, we've decided to restructure your position effective immediately," Hillary announced with practiced corporate coldness. "Your role as senior account strategist is being eliminated as part of our organizational optimization initiative." Carol slid a termination agreement across the table toward me. The severance package was insulting. 2 weeks of pay and basic health insurance continuation. No recognition of the $3 million deal I'd just closed. No performance bonus despite generating the biggest revenue in company history. No acknowledgement of 9 years of dedicated service. "We'll need you to clean out your office today and return all company property," Hillary continued, clearly enjoying her moment of power. "Security will escort you out once you've gathered your personal items." I took my time reviewing the termination agreement, making notes in the margins while they waited. Richard looked uncomfortable throughout the entire meeting, barely making eye contact with me. After several minutes, I looked up and signed the agreement. But I had absolutely no intention of accepting their terms. Within hours of leaving Sephora, I was sitting in Frank Brennan's law office with a banker's box full of evidence. Frank reviewed my documentation for 3 straight hours, going through every email, every contract draft, every meeting note, every timestamp. "Robert, this is the most comprehensive wrongful termination case I've seen in 20 years of practice," he said, adjusting his reading glasses. "You've documented everything perfectly. The timeline alone proves bad faith termination, firing you immediately after you generated their biggest revenue event ever." I asked him what our options were. "Multiple angles," he replied. "Wrongful termination, commission theft, potentially even fraud considering they're actively denying your role in generating that revenue. Illinois employment law generally favors at-will termination, but when there's clear evidence of retaliatory firing and credit theft, we have very solid ground to stand on." I told him to file everything, but not to serve papers yet. I wanted to see how this situation would play out first. Meanwhile, I had coffee with Victor Hale at Ascendric Solutions on May 5th. Victor offered me an executive partnership position on the spot, $200,000 base salary, profit-sharing bonuses, and a 12% equity stake in the company. The offer was more than generous. It was potentially life-changing. There was one condition I gave Victor before accepting his generous offer. "I have a client relationship that might follow me," I told him, "but I need to handle the transition ethically and professionally." Victor smiled and replied, "Absolutely. We do business the right way here, Robert. That's exactly the kind of integrity we want in a partner." I accepted his offer and started at Ascendrix on May 12th. The equity stake represented significant potential value that could be worth millions if we grew the company as projected. But I didn't immediately contact William Nash at Titan Arrow. I wanted to see how Sephora would handle the implementation of the contract I'd negotiated and secured. Would they be able to deliver on the promises I'd made? Could Hillary actually manage a project of this complexity? The answer came sooner than I expected, and it was even worse than I'd hoped for. On May 19th, William Nash called me directly on my personal cell phone. His voice was frustrated and confused in a way I'd never heard before. "Robert, what the hell is happening over at Sephora? We've been trying to schedule our implementation kickoff meeting for 3 weeks now, and nobody seems to understand the details of our contract. This Hillary woman keeps rescheduling our calls, and when we do connect, she doesn't understand any of the customizations we agreed on." I chose my words very carefully in that conversation with William. "I'm no longer with Sephora as of early May," I told him. "They restructured my position as part of their organizational changes." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then William said something that made my heart race with possibility. "They got rid of you right after we signed our biggest contract with them? Robert, you were the only reason we chose Sephora over the competition. You understood our business from day one. You solved problems we didn't even know we had." I replied professionally. "I appreciate that feedback, William. Unfortunately, these things happened during corporate restructuring." But William wasn't finished. "This is completely unacceptable. We signed that contract based on your representations and your understanding of our specific needs. If you're not there to oversee the implementation, we have serious concerns about Sephora's ability to deliver what they promised us." There was another pause, and then William asked the question I'd been hoping he would ask. "Where are you working now, Robert?" I smiled as I answered, "I've joined Ascendrix Solutions as an executive partner. We specialize in the same type of enterprise software solutions, and we have an excellent track record with aerospace companies." William's next question was music to my ears. "Can Ascendrix handle a project like ours?" "William, we can handle your project better than anyone else in the market," I replied with complete confidence. "And you'd be working directly with me throughout the entire implementation process, just like you wanted." The excitement in his voice was obvious. "Send me a proposal, Robert. If it's competitive with what we're already committed to, we're pulling out of the Sephora contract." Within 48 hours, Ascendrix Solutions had submitted a comprehensive proposal to Titan Arrow Industries. Our pricing was 15% lower than Sephora's because we didn't have their overhead costs. Our implementation timeline was faster because we were more efficient. Most importantly, William Nash trusted me completely to deliver results. On May 26th, Titan Arrow Industries formally terminated their contract with Sephora Systems, citing failure to provide adequate project management and implementation support. They signed with Ascendrix Solutions the same day, bringing the full $3 million contract with them. The deal that Hillary had claimed credit for was gone, along with the credibility she tried to steal from me. But it got even better than that. Titan was now telling other companies in their industry about Sephora's inability to properly manage major implementations. Word spreads fast in specialized industries, and Sephora's reputation was taking a serious hit. The news of Titan Arrow's contract termination hit Sephora like a Category 5 hurricane. Within 24 hours, the entire company knew that their biggest deal in history had completely evaporated. What they didn't immediately understand was why it had happened so suddenly. Richard Callahan called an emergency board meeting because the company's quarterly projections had been built around the Titan revenue. Investors who had been promised significant returns based on that contract were now asking very hard questions about Sephora's ability to retain major clients. On May 28th, I received a call from Kevin in accounting. He was whispering, clearly calling from somewhere private in the office. "Robert, this place is in complete meltdown mode," he told me. "Richard is absolutely furious about the Titan situation, and he's demanding answers from Hillary. She's basically throwing everyone under the bus except herself." I asked what she was saying to explain the loss. "She's claiming that Titan was always an unstable client with unrealistic demands, and that losing them was actually beneficial for the company's long-term strategic goals," Kevin replied. "Nobody's buying it, though. Everyone knows you were the reason they signed in the first place." 3 days later, Frank Brennan served Sephora with a comprehensive wrongful termination lawsuit that included every piece of documentation I'd collected. The lawsuit filing included William Nash's sworn affidavit stating that Titan Aero had chosen Sephora specifically because of their confidence in Robert Sullivan's expertise, and that they had terminated the contract solely due to my absence from the implementation team. This wasn't just my word against theirs anymore. This was documented proof from the client themselves that had been the key factor in securing and losing the deal. The legal filing became public record within days. Industry publications started reporting on the lawsuit and Sephora's sudden loss of their biggest contract. The company's reputation in the software solutions market began crumbling as potential clients questioned whether they could deliver on major projects without the expertise that had generated their most significant recent success. Current clients started asking uncomfortable questions about account management and project continuity. Some began reviewing their contracts for early termination clauses. The damage was spreading far beyond just the Titan Aero situation. On June 10th, Sephora's board of directors launched an internal investigation into the circumstances surrounding my termination and the subsequent loss of the Titan contract. They hired McKinsey Consulting, an external firm, to review company communications, management decisions, and client relationship protocols. The investigation was supposed to be confidential, but word leaked quickly through the office that heads were going to roll. The McKinsey investigation lasted 2 weeks and was more thorough than anyone expected. When the results were presented to the board on June 24th, the findings were absolutely devastating for Hillary. The consultants had discovered that she had systematically taken credit for work performed by other team members, not just me. They found evidence of her making strategic decisions without proper consultation, alienating key clients through her inexperience and arrogance, and creating a toxic work environment that had led to the departure of 4 other senior staff members in addition to myself. Most critically for the company's bottom line, they determined that my termination had been retaliatory and had directly caused the loss of the Titan contract. This resulted in an immediate $3 million revenue loss, plus an estimated $4.2 million in projected future business from Titan's referrals and the damage to Sephora's industry reputation. The total cost of Hillary's actions was approaching $7.5 million. On June 27th, Richard Callahan called another company meeting. This time, Hillary wasn't present. Effective immediately, Hillary Callahan is no longer serving as Director of Commercial Strategy. He announced to a room full of employees who were trying very hard not to smile. The board has determined that recent management decisions have not been in the company's best interests. Hillary was quietly terminated with a basic severance package and escorted out of the building the same day. No fanfare, no press release, no graceful transition period. Her brief reign as commercial director had lasted exactly 5 months and had nearly destroyed the company she was supposed to help lead. But my story doesn't end with Hillary's downfall. It ends with something much more satisfying than simple revenge. It ends with my own incredible success. By early July 2023, Ascendrix Solutions had successfully implemented the Titan Aero project, coming in ahead of schedule and under budget. William Nash was so impressed with our work that he personally recommended us to 6 other companies in his professional network. Our partnership approach and my industry relationships had already secured $4.8 million in new contracts within just 2 months. My 12% equity stake in Ascendrix was growing in value at an incredible rate. More importantly than the money, I had helped build something meaningful, a company culture based on actual merit, integrity, and genuine client relationships instead of politics and nepotism. We were attracting top talent from across the industry because word was spreading that Ascendrix rewarded competence and hard work rather than family connections and corporate buzzwords. Sephora eventually settled my wrongful termination lawsuit in August 2023 for $485,000, plus a public acknowledgement of my role in developing their most successful client relationships. They also agreed to provide positive references for any future opportunities and to correct any false statements about my departure. Richard Callahan personally called me to apologize for his daughter's actions and to ask if I would consider returning to Sephora in a senior leadership role to help restore client confidence. "We need someone with your credibility to rebuild our reputation," he said. I politely declined his offer. "I've built something better here," I told him. The most satisfying moment came in November 2023 when Ascendric Solutions was recognized as the Rising Star Software Partner by the Illinois Technology Association. During my acceptance speech at the awards ceremony, I talked about the importance of recognizing individual contributions and building teams based on competence rather than connections. I spoke about integrity in client relationships and the value of expertise over politics. I never mentioned Hillary Callahan by name during that speech. I didn't need to. Everyone in the industry already knew the story by then. The technology community in Chicago isn't that large, and word travels fast when someone tries to steal credit and fails spectacularly. Looking back now, exactly 18 months later, I realized that Hillary's betrayal was actually the best thing that ever happened to my career. Her attempt to steal my success and eliminate me forced me to document my value, protect my relationships, and ultimately build something bigger and better than I could have ever achieved while staying at Sephora. The Titan Arrow implementation led to 6 more major contracts. Those contracts led to 12 more. Within a year, Ascendric had grown from a mid-sized competitor to one of the leading software solution providers in the Midwest. My equity stake, which started at 12%, had grown to be worth over $2.3 million on paper as the company's valuation increased. But the real satisfaction wasn't the money or the recognition. It was proving that competence and integrity could triumph over politics and nepotism when you're smart enough to protect yourself and strategic enough to plan your moves carefully. Meanwhile, Sephora never recovered from the reputation damage. They lost 3 more major clients over the following months as word spread about their internal problems and management issues. Richard Callahan was eventually forced to sell the company at a significant loss to a private equity firm that immediately restructured the entire organization. The lesson here isn't really about revenge, though I won't lie and say the satisfaction wasn't incredible. The real lesson is about preparation and documentation. When someone tries to take credit for your work, when they attempt to eliminate you to protect their own undeserved position, the best response isn't anger or confrontation. It's evidence. Document everything you do. Protect your professional relationships. Build your reputation on substance rather than office politics. Always be prepared to prove your value with facts that nobody can dispute. And when someone tries to destroy you professionally, make sure you're already 10 steps ahead with everything you need to not just survive, but to thrive somewhere better. Because in the end, competence always wins over connections. Integrity always triumphs over manipulation. And the truth has a way of revealing itself when you've been smart enough to preserve it with timestamps, emails, and witness statements. Hillary learned that lesson the hard way, and her father's company paid the price for her arrogance and incompetence. But I learned an even more valuable lesson. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you professionally can become the catalyst for the best thing that ever happens to your career. Today, as I write this story, Ascendric Solutions employs over 200 people and has annual revenues approaching $50 million. My equity stake is now worth more than I made in my entire 9 years at Sephora combined. We've been featured in 3 different business magazines as one of the fastest-growing technology companies in the region. More importantly, we've built a company culture where people are promoted based on their contributions, not their family connections. Where credit is given where it's earned. Where competence is rewarded and incompetence is addressed quickly and fairly. I often think about what would have happened if I had just accepted Hillary's betrayal quietly. If I had taken that week's severance package and looked for another job without fighting back. I probably would have found another position eventually, maybe even a good one. But I never would have built something this significant. I never would have proven to myself and the entire industry that expertise and integrity could defeat nepotism and politics when you're strategic enough to plan your response carefully. The technology industry in Chicago is different now too. The Sephora situation became a cautionary tale that gets discussed at industry conferences and business schools. It's a reminder that family businesses need to be especially careful about promoting relatives without merit. 6 months ago, I ran into Hillary at a Starbucks downtown. She was dressed professionally, carrying what looked like job application materials. Our eyes met briefly, and I could see the recognition and embarrassment on her face. I nodded politely and continued with my order. I didn't feel anger anymore, just a kind of sad understanding of how differently things could have played out if she had been willing to earn her position instead of stealing credit from others. Later that day, I looked up her LinkedIn profile out of curiosity. She was listed as seeking new opportunities in business development. Her experience section made no mention of Sephora Systems or her brief time as commercial director. Sometimes I wonder if she learned anything from the experience, if she understands now that sustainable success has to be built on genuine competence and earned achievements rather than borrowed credibility and stolen accomplishments. But honestly, that's not my concern anymore. I've moved far beyond that chapter of my career and that level of workplace drama. My focus now is on growing Ascendrix, mentoring the talented people we've hired, and continuing to build something meaningful in an industry that rewards genuine expertise and ethical business practices. If you're reading this story and you've experienced something similar in your own career, if you've had someone steal credit for your work or try to eliminate you to protect their own unearned position, here's my advice. Don't get mad. Get strategic. Document everything you do with dates, times, and witnesses when possible. Build genuine relationships with your clients and colleagues based on real value and competence. Always be prepared to prove your worth with evidence that nobody can argue against. And remember that sometimes the worst professional betrayal can become the catalyst for the best thing that ever happens to your career, if you're smart enough to turn it into an opportunity rather than just a setback. The business world needs more people who succeed based on merit rather than politics, who build rather than steal, who create value rather than taking credit for other people's work. Be one of those people. The rewards, both financial and personal, are worth more than any stolen moment of glory could ever be. And if someone does try to destroy you professionally, make sure you're already 10 steps ahead with the documentation, relationships, and strategic plan you need to not just survive, but to build something even better than what they tried to take away from you.